Stacey Mitchell was born in Dorset, England. She was part of a very friendly and loving family. She had an older brother and two younger sisters. When Stacy was 10 years old, her family moved from the UK to Australia. The girl was cheerful and friendly. Her father called her the soul of the house, as Stacy found a common language with everyone, never took offense, and tried to help the household and learn new things. She loved to meet new people. She was very sociable and sweet. Being already in her teens, Stacy met through a mutual friend two girls who were older than her, but still they became friends. Jessica was 19 and Valeria was 21, and these girls attracted Stacy by their differentness from the rest of her friends. Valeria was into the vampire subculture and said she had been drinking blood since she was 10 years old. First she tasted her own, and then she tasted someone else's. As Stacy grew older, she began to argue with her parents more and more. She was no longer as willing to play with her younger sisters. After arguments with her parents, she would walk around resentful for long periods of time or lock herself in her room. Because her parents did not understand her, Stacy, who turned 16, decided to run away from home on December 7, 2006. Many police officers have been known to comfort parents when children run away from home with arguments like this. Your children have grown up, they need time with their friends, they will come home sooner or later. You don't have to worry that they are in any danger, and you don't have to take hasty and rude actions. The parents, despite being very fond of Stacy and worried, didn't overreact, and in order not to further damage their relationship with their daughter, decided to give her some time to stay at her friend's house before contacting the authorities. But eventually, 6 days later, the parents reported Stacy missing to the police. It was December 13th, 2006. When Stacy ran away from home, she just wanted to be in a different environment with other people until things settled down at home after the recent scandal. But she didn't know where she could go, since almost all of her friends lived with their parents, and naturally hanging out with anyone for a few days wouldn't work without answering questions from adults. It was then that Stacy got the idea to go to her new adult friends Jessica and Valerie. They were both older than Stacy and lived in a house they rented in the suburbs with their boyfriend David Haynes. The house was quite large, and there was another spare bedroom available. When Stacy came to her friends, they offered her this room for only $20 a week, and the girl was happy, as she realized that this option would help solve her problem. So, on December 14th, Stacy moved into an empty bedroom in the front of her friend's house. She loved that she could now live her life without any rules, without having to answer to anyone or argue with anyone. Stacy's friends were older than her, and therefore, if she needed alcohol, they could always help out. Life is perfect, so Stacy thought. Officially, the young girl had been reported missing for a few days now, and the whole family was constantly searching and waiting for her, no matter what disagreements they had. The parents loved their daughter and wanted the best for her, and were truly concerned for her safety and well-being. As the family searched for the runaway Stacy, they eventually found her and contacted their daughter on December 17th, 10 days after she ran away. The parents talked to the girl on the phone, and she told them where she was staying. In an attempt to repair the relationship, they didn't act immediately and force Stacy to return home the same day. They wanted to rebuild trust and not make their daughter angry, pressure her, or scare her. After the conversation, Stacy assured her parents that she would be home the next day, so they all agreed that she would stay with her friends for one more night and then go back. Her parents even talked about meeting her at the train station. So the next day, Stacy's parents arrived at the station excited, wanting to meet their daughter, but she was nowhere to be found. They thought maybe their daughter had changed her mind about coming, not trusting them or just didn't want to go with them, and waited to make sure she wasn't late. But in the end, the girl's mother and father returned home without their daughter, agonizing over what had gone wrong. After Stacy didn't show up for her appointment, the girl's parents gave the police all the information about where she said she was staying, exactly the people she was staying with, and told them that Stacy was missing again. Unfortunately, her parents' worst nightmare became a reality just a couple days later. On December 21st, a body was found, and it was confirmed to be Stacy. Some sources said it was just a severed leg, while other sources claimed it was Stacey Mitchell's entire full body. In fact, her body was found in a large plastic wheelie garbage can behind the house. The event became even more real to her family and friends when they learned the gruesome details of Stacy's murder. It turns out that the girl's new friends had plotted her murder as early as the day after she arrived at their house. Stacy had been annoying Valerie and Jessica from the very beginning with her cheerful attitude to life, her belief that since they were her older friends, they should therefore help her. It got to the point where the older girls were fighting among themselves, blaming each other for letting Stacy stay with them. They didn't like the way Stacy walked around the house in her underwear, the way she could walk into any room at any time, the way she was always annoying to talk to. Stacy became a problem for the girlfriends, and another roommate, David, increased their irritation by informing Jessica and Valerie that Stacy was already making nasty comments about his friends, criticizing their mannerisms. Eventually, Valerie said that no one should stop them from living their lives the way they want, and they decided that they needed to get rid of Stacy. And the best way is not to kick her out, but to remove her physically, that is, to kill her. The two friends began discussing ways to kill Stacy and told David their intentions. The boyfriend was hesitant, but did not strongly disagree. David later claimed that on December 17th, he saw a right-handed Jessica rubbing glass in a stone cup. When he inquired as to what she was doing, Jessica openly told him that they were going to put the glass in Stacy's food, to which David replied that it would be a very painful and long death. The glass going into Stacy's esophagus and intestines will bring her pain and agony. The girl would scream loudly, and that might alert the neighbors. Jessica replied, so David wouldn't worry. If the girl screamed too much, she would just bury her head in the ground to gag her. In order to feed Stacy the glass, she had to be grabbed and held for a while. This was asked of David by his friends, but he refused, and then it was suggested that he just be an observer. As we know, Stacy had already had a phone conversation with her parents and was going to go to meet them on December 18th to return home. She even informed David and Valerie and Jessica about it, but they apparently didn't want to deviate from the plan anymore. And as David recounted, he was even relieved that Stacy would be leaving, but made no attempt or even conversation to change his girlfriend's minds and abandon their plan. On December 18th, Stacy missed a meeting she had scheduled with her parents. Later that night, Stacy, Valerie, Jessica, and David went to a local bridge. There was a highway nearby, and they amused themselves by throwing bottles at cars and running away when they interfered with traffic, and later that night the four of them returned to the house and sat at the kitchen table drinking whiskey. Stacy complained of a headache, and Jessica gave her a pill, explaining that it was a painkiller, but it wasn't. The pill was a sleeping pill for insomniacs. Even earlier in the morning, Valerie had warned David to lock himself in his bedroom and turn up the loud music when it was time to commit the murder, as he refused to take part. So, after Stacy was given the pill, David noticed Valerie holding a concrete block between her legs. Then she turned on the music, and Jessica started dancing. David then retired to his bedroom, leaving his two older friends and one younger one to pull up the whiskey, and turned on loud music in his room. Stacy tried to get up and dance with the girls, but Valerius told her to sit down, and then David heard Jessica yell, "Now, now," followed by a loud thud and Stacy screaming. It turned out that Valerie had hit Stacy in the head with that concrete block. David called Jessica, and she went to his room, and there she found the guy very scared and having what he said was a panic attack. Valerie hit Stacy a few more times with a concrete block and then called Jessica. So Jessica went back and forth between David and Valerie several times, watching from the doorway what her friend was doing to Stacy. Jessica turned up the music in David's room, then quieter to talk to him, then louder to drown out the screams of the girl being killed. Stacy screamed, "Help me!" but David had no response to her cries. And at one point, the girl crawled to his bedroom door and began to cling to it, but David forcefully slammed the door shut. He stated to Jessica that he was unable to watch all of this and would like to leave. That's when Jessica blindfolded David with a black t-shirt and walked him past Stacy and out of the house. Jessica told the guy to take a walk until it was over and she would call him later. David knew there was a murder going on in the house, but instead of stopping the violence, calling the police just ran away. The concrete block that Valerie used to repeatedly beat Stacy broke, but Valerie didn't stop. Jessica eventually joined Valeria as well. She removed her chain belt and used it to strangle what little was left of their friend. Stacy pulled on the chain with her last strength and fought for her breath. But Jessica pulled harder, and after a while Stacy passed out. The two friends, happy that they had succeeded in their plan, started squealing and hugging and went to the table where Valerie was still left with an unfinished whiskey to celebrate their victory. 20 minutes later, Jessica went to check Stacy's pulse and found that the girl was still alive. Everything around the kitchen, including the floor and walls, was covered and splattered with blood, so Valerie grabbed some sponges and a mop and began to clean up. About 30 minutes later, Jessica checked Stacy's pulse again, but the girl was already dead. Around 1:30 a.m., David called and asked if it was over. Jessica said that yes, Stacy was dead, but they needed time to clean up and suggested that the guy walk around for a couple more hours. So David walked around the neighborhood for 2 hours while he waited for permission to return. The two girlfriends started cleaning up, and amazingly, they were videotaping everything: the kills, the beating, and the cleanup. They laughed and mocked Stacy's accent, mocking the way the girl pronounced the words. The footage captures Jessica in the process of cleaning up, laughing and dancing while Stacy's body lies on the floor. At 3:20 a.m., Jessica called David and told him the house was still a bit messy, but he could come back. He was blindfolded again and escorted back to his room. By then, Valerie and Jessica had already removed Stacy's body and hid it in a dumpster behind the house and figured out how to finally get rid of it. In the morning, they went with David to a local hardware store in search of a chainsaw and some shovels. 3 days later, on December 21st, police arrived at the friend's home just after midnight. Jessica managed to jump out the door and run away. Valerie, who remained in the house, gave an assumed name, and she and David told authorities that Stacy had left them and it was unknown where she was. 3 hours later, after the police learned Valeria's true name, they again visited the house where the friends were staying. This time, only David was there, and he admitted that Stacy had been killed by Valerie and Jessica and told them where to find the body, which was in a plastic wheelie bin behind the house. After all three were arrested and sent to their cells, an inmate, Rochelle Van Roos, was placed with Valeria and had conversations with the girl about various topics. This prisoner later said that she had heard Valeria tell the story of the murder of a young girl, and what struck her was that Valeria felt no remorse and seemed proud of her crime. Valerie revealed that she and Jessica had just had so much fun killing Stacy and then drinking and being glad that they were rid of the bratty and annoying girl. Valerie herself later confirmed what she said about Stacy annoying them, and that was exactly her fault. She also revealed that she and Jessica hit Stacy about 180 times. To her cellmate, Valerie said that she was very sorry that it all happened rather quickly. She wished she had spent more time on the horrible stunts she and Jessica performed on Stacy. In 2007, Jessica wrote about the murder and admitted that once it started, meaning Stacy's murder, she wasn't herself anymore, and she had never felt such bloodlust before, and something changed in her at that moment. And when Stacy's blood splattered on her, it was like a veil went over her eyes, and she couldn't stop. Judging from the letters and prison stories, it was quite clear that neither Valerie nor Jessica were sorry or ashamed of what they had done. The young girl's life and how much her family was shocked and saddened meant absolutely nothing to the two friends. They laughed during the trial, not taking it all seriously. Valerie's lawyer said she had a severe personality disorder and had been raised by an abusive father who had previously served prison sentences for harming his wife. At the age of 10, the girl was obsessed with a vampire subculture and a desire to drink people's blood. Jessica, Valerie, and David pleaded guilty to the crime. In March 2008, David received a 2-year prison sentence for accessory after the fact. Jessica and Valerie were sentenced to life sentences of maximum security, each with a minimum term of 24 years before parole. Valerie appealed her sentence, but her appeal was unanimously rejected. The judge was appalled by her friend's behavior in court. She told them, "You have had over a year in custody to reflect on the atrocity of your crime, yet you still have no remorse and apparently no regard for the sanctity of human life. There is also another problem. It lies in the fact that you take pleasure in violence." After the trial, The girlfriends ended up in different prisons. At first, they tried to keep in touch by sending letters through occasionate Catherine Burney, but over time their correspondence died down. In 2009, 3 officers were injured after intervening in a fight between Valerie and another inmate. In 2013, Valerie attempted to escape from the prison, but was not even able to leave the grounds. In 2014, Jessica was cleared of 20 misdemeanor charges because it was stated that authorities deemed the other charges insignificant compared to the crime that brought her to prison. The court ruled that 18 counts of riding public transportation without a valid ticket, 1 count of drinking in a vehicle, and 1 count of smoking in a prohibited place were very minor offenses and not even worth considering. Stacy's family still mourns her death and blames themselves for not keeping their Stacy safe. Even years after Stacy's death, her father said in an interview with a reporter that it's very hard. You think about it every day. You think you could have changed something or done things differently. Stacy could have had a baby by now, and I'm interested in imagining what that baby would look like. So it's really sad that we'll never see her again. Stacy's older brother, who is only 2 years older than her, eventually returned to the UK after his sister's death. He said that staying where his sister died was very painful for him. It's hard to realize that her death was completely senseless. To know that his sister was close to coming home to her family, and to realize that now Stacy is no longer with him. The story of 2 friends who took pleasure in killing a young girl cannot leave hearts indifferent. The young girl quarreled with her parents, turned to her older friends, who instead of helping advice, said that she annoyed them. And this David, such a delicate and cowardly wallflower who was having a panic attack, went for a simple walk around the neighborhood and did nothing to prevent the murder, even though he had time to do so. A single call to the police would have been enough, and maybe Stacy could have survived. Of course, we're not judges, but it seems that David's punishment doesn't fit his role in this case. What do you think, friends? Write in the comments.